Hi everyone, and welcome to Billy Fitzgerald Golf. This is part 2 of the lower body instruction, and joining me is Scott Hogan from Scott Hogan Golf, fellow Illinois PGA professional and director of golf instruction at Stony Creek. So in the first part we talked about backswing and what our lower body's doing in the backswing, a little bit at impact, and now part 2 we're going to get, again, review impact and then where we're going to in the finish. You know, what happens on the lead side. Part 1 was trail side, part 2 is lead side. So stick around and we're going to take you through a little bit of lead side, lower body, and check out Scott's webpage, scotthogangolf.com, where you can find a lot of great information, great teaching information, great instruction, and reviews on things you may be interested in buying and purchasing. So let's get started on part 2 of lower body. So when we start to transition forward, and again, where we left off with the backswing and how this right hip socket, and again, this right hip socket makes it possible for me to get left. This depth in my hip actually makes it easier, and I have more leverage to get up into this left leg. Okay, so that's what happens when we transfer, and it actually should be pretty easy for you to get to your left foot, because as I'm swinging back and I'm pushing away from the club and I'm pushing this hip away, and all of a sudden I keep pushing, and this golf club, the momentum of the club is going to start to go this way, and it all automatically puts me up to this left leg here. Now we're just going to do the same thing on this side that we did in the backswing.
Right.
Scott, so again, we've got our tilts are going to be the same. We're going to push with this left hip now out of the way, and what I see more than anything is that when you swing back, and I have my right hip socket and I get up to my left, this is pushing away, this thigh is moving down. So let me say that one more time. As I get to the top of the swing, Scott, and you've heard the word, you know, back into the target, or you feel like you're almost sitting or squatting. You see some of the best players in the history of the game have had really good squats, and what that is that once we get up to our left side, from the transition, is that this left hip pushes back and this right thigh moves in, but I'm almost feeling like I'm pushing back to my right. So once I get up here, my left hip is pushing back to my right. So my right is not going forward. It's moving parallel to this ball.
Right. Yeah, if anything, that right, when you just did that, it's moving forward towards the target, but it's definitely, we have our yellow stick on the ground there. It is not crossing that line. If anything, it's getting away from that line.
Yeah, so if I were to make a swing back, Scott, see my left leg is going to push my left hip out of the way, and I feel like I'm almost going to sit, because I feel like my right foot is moving in the ground. I almost feel like this foot here is turning into the ground. What it's not doing is I don't get here and push my left hip back and make my right hip go this way.
Right.
I don't want to see, in other words, when I look at video and I work with people, especially really good players, from where my right hip started, it can't be any closer to the ball when I hit the ball.
Right.
If it is, I'm running out of room, and all of a sudden I get closer to the ball, and now the face is behind. Everything's got to stop so I can catch the face up. Right.
Yeah, and the other thing, do that one more time as you transition. This is something I'll tell people, especially if they're really struggling to get this concept. I'll just say, if I took your club from you for a sec, what would you do if I had you you got to bend over and pick something up off of the ground. So what you would do is you would start squatting, and you would actually, forward bend a little bit, right? So that's just something you see as well. Again, I like to focus more on the lower part, but you do see that in the upper body as well. It's almost like you're going to sit and lower that body into it a little bit too. So you might even see your head go down a little, possibly. But.
Oh yeah. With the good players, almost always, Scott. And I think that's a great point that you make, is that it's when you talk about almost bending down, and it's where my hips, as my hips go back, of course I'm going to go down this way. So what we see is that people stand up, so their hips get closer to the ball, and they go up. So again, you're not, where have my tilts gone? They're gone. You know, I'm not going around my spine angle anymore. So once you get up here, you know, you feel that left hip push away and that right leg work in, and now I'm right back to impact.
Yeah, and now we're in that spot. And again, it all starts from where are you trying to get to at impact, and then build your swing around that. I think too many times people do magic motions. Hey,
Right.
I'm going to move my hips. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And that's going to create this magic impact for us. And instead, work on your impact, and then how are you going to add these motions to get there, as opposed to the other way around, just hoping it happens.
Yeah.
Essentially. So.
Right. And you look at these again. You look at these shoulders when I stand up and down, and this is big time for people that have back problems.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how people get hurt. Is that if I'm standing in a barrel here, Scott, and my hips are going back and forth, we're talking about rotation here, right? There's
Yeah.
no pressure on my back when I do this.
Right.
Well, we don't play golf like this.
Right.
So we play it from this position.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I swing back, my right side goes up, my left side goes down. When I swing forward, my left side goes up, my right side goes down.
Yeah.
So I keep those parallel. My hips
Yeah.
and shoulders are parallel. Here's what happens with people that have, back problems is they get here, see, and they have these tilts, but their right hip gets closer to the ball.
Yeah.
See, and all of a sudden my hip's closer this way and my shoulders are tilted this way, and that's doing this to my spine.
Right. Now you got issues. And one of the most famous cases, and he's actually playing a lot better this year, Jason Day, right?
Yeah.
And he used to be notorious. I'm going to keep everything very still, move these very little on the lower end, and now he's freeing it up, and he's playing some of his best golf. So
Right.
we're
Yeah.
seeing that a lot.
Yeah.
right?
I mean, that's where you've got to be careful with that. So again, when you get these, when you're going forward, it's get to your backswing. You're up to your left. So the more you can get your right hip socket out of the way, you have leverage to get to that left. That left pushes out of the way while your right foot is moving this way.
Right.
It's going into the ground, and I almost feel like I'm moving back.
Yeah, and the same thing as we talked about in the backswing is that push up.
Yeah.
And it's basically, you're pushing straight up your leg, which is actually on the side of your body.
Right.
So if you know anything about torque, that's what creates that turning motion. That's what you see, but you're not doing it. It's happening. You're pushing along the body, and that's going to make it look like it rotates, which it does, but it's just you're not doing as much of that as you think you need to.
Yeah.
You're not doing the spin, we'll say.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the one other thing that I wanted to kind of show you. Bring this back in here,
Mm-hmm.
Scott. Again, if I get this in here, and let's say, and I think a lot of people do this. They draw a line on the back side of the golfer when they're
Yeah.
taking a video, right?
Yeah.
So if I just stay on that line,
Yeah.
right? If I just stay on that line, so I'm staying on that line. It's harder to, with this, but if I'm just staying on that line
Mm-hmm.
with my hips, I'm still moving into that ball.
Right.
Okay, so when you draw that on the backside, you want to make sure that if you're using your hip sockets properly, that right hip socket goes back, I move up left, and my left hip socket goes back. So you're spending a majority of the time behind that line.
Yeah.
Most people you need to be farther away typically than you think
Yeah.
from the ball.
Okay. Again, it's not a full circular motion. That's just
Right.
not what's happening. They're moving, like you said, it's oblong. It's, hey, we're moving in kind of this kind of weird, kind of steppy pattern almost. It's like, hey, this is going back, then this goes back.
Right.
As you go. So,
And I think if you get into, just rotation,
mhm.
you're
you got a problem.
you're going to be in for a world of hurt, because
Yeah.
it's a way to look at it, but I think it's going to make you worse than better. Hi everyone, like and subscribe to my channel, Billy Fitzgerald Golf, for all tips on golf. If you'd like a live lesson or want to send me a message, visit me at billyfitzgeraldgolf.com.